Hey, everybody. It's Jason. I know you've heard my voice many times in the podcast, and I'm here to tell you about something very interesting coming up. I want to let you know about an incredible opportunity for you to get free tips and strategies to build and monetize your personal brand. My good friend Rory Vaden is a New York Times bestselling author and Hall of Fame speaker, and he and his wife founded a company called Brand Builders Group. And they have put together a huge online summit where they're interviewing some of the most influential personal brands in the world on their never before shared secrets of how they became who they are today. So who's speaking at the summit? We've got Lewis Howes, got Michael Hyatt, Dennis Rodman, Kevin Harrington, Jay Baer, Donald Miller, and more. This is a rare opportunity for you to hear the stories about how they became New York Times bestselling authors, how they built high-paid keynote speaking careers, how they have grown massive online followings, and exactly what they have done to create large, multi-seven-figure businesses. If you're someone who is looking to create any type of influence, you have to check this out. It's totally free, and you're going to be learning from the masters who've actually done this. So I want you to encourage you to head over to the show notes today. And in the show notes, I'm going to put a link to this summit. Again, completely free. Take a look at it. I feel super confident you will find it valuable. And now, enjoy the episode. My guest on the show today is Ben Levin. Ben is an autistic teenager with a passion for writing. His first young adult novel, In the Hole, has just been released. Ben is a true inspiration to all around him. He says that autism is not a curse, it's a gift. Welcome, Ben. So good to have you on today.
Thank you. It's great to be on here.
Yeah, I was just sharing with Ben before we officially started recording. You are a first for me, and I've recorded about 100 episodes. I've never had a high school. I've had a couple people who are in college, but you are my first high school interview, so you are a first on my show, Ben. So thank you. Welcome. And so glad to have you here and talk about, I know we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about autism. And then we're going to just get to know you. So again, I'm really excited to have you here today.
It sounds terrific.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Ben. All right. Should we just kick it off here? Should we just get into it? All right, let's do it. All right, so Ben, first thing for you, what's something that you nerd out about?
I nerd out a lot about history. I read, especially history, I read a lot of biographies when I was in middle school, and I still remember a lot of things. And sometimes when in history, when my teacher is talking about people or events which I really know a lot about, I get really excited. Say she was asking me about say we were talking about Jackie Robinson and she asked who recruited him. I would have waved my hand like crazy until she called on me and then said Branch Rickey before going into the trauma Branch Rickey had when he was coaching college baseball that made him want to break the color barrier.
So I like history. It's one of the subjects I did pretty well in school, and I didn't do well in all of them.
Did you
have a go ahead.
Did you do well in English?
I did very well in English and spelling. I'm a reader, a writer, a speaker. I did very well in geography and history. I did not so well in math and science. I'm not much of a math and science person. I just don't really enjoy it. I was one of those kids that I did really well in the things I cared about, and then the things I didn't care about, I really struggled to like. I could do well in them if I wanted to. I just didn't want to, so I didn't really care. I didn't care enough.
Education-wise, we're exactly the same.
Yeah. I think this is something that I think. Again, this is just. I'm curious of your opinion on this too, since you said we're similar. I know some people that just like through brute force, like are good at learning everything, whether they like it or not. For me, at the end of the day, Ben, I just get bored easily. Like I just get bored. I was like, I don't care about math. I'm going to school to be in journalism. I'm not going to college for journalism. I'm not going to do a lot of math. I hate math. I don't care. I'm never going to, like, my thing in high school and I think colleges, I'm never really going to use this because I know it's not a thing I'm that very good at. I just don't care. And I just realized through that if I don't care, I get bored, and then I just like, it's a grind for me to do it. Is that how it goes? I mean, you're in high school now, so is that kind of how you feel about certain subjects too?
Kind of. I mean, I don't despise math and science, but
Mm-hmm.
they aren't particularly interesting to me, and I definitely prefer English and history.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved English. I love history. So I was going to ask you about history. Any specific either time period? Are you most interested in things like, some people are really interested in military history. Some people are really interested in like economic history. Some people are really interested in more like the people. Like, is there anything that really gets you excited in terms of history?
I'm really into biographies and modern history.
Mm,
I'm really fascinated with the Black experience in America.
amazing. Can you recommend a biography for us that you read recently that you think the audience, myself and everybody listening, should listen to, or should listen to or read?
That's a hard one. I haven't read a lot of biographies lately, but one of my favorite books ever is A Mighty Long Way: My Journey to Justice at Central High School by Carlotta Walls Lanier.
Mm. What's the premise of the book? Or I don't know that name. What's the topic behind it, or the philosophy or theme?
Carlotta Walls Lanier was one of the first 9 Black teenagers to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay. Gotcha. And that would have been in the early 60s?
Actually,
late 50s?
Late 50s.
Yeah, late 50s. Okay. Gotcha. That's cool, Ben. Well, I know I have a feeling this is going to come back up again. So I'm actually going to move us forward here, but I have a feeling we'll talk more about this. So next question I have for you, Ben, is about something that's inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's. So what's something that you like doing, is easy for you, you're really comfortable just going out and doing, and somebody else in your life where that is not something that they're comfortable doing? What's that thing for you? Or one thing for you?
I'm pretty decent at asking for help when I feel like I'm struggling or I feel like there's something going on. Well, sometimes it takes me a little time to get comfortable. I'm not perfect any more than anyone's perfect. I do fairly well in asking for help or support when I need it. And I don't know anyone specifically who struggles with that, but I do know that it is not an easy challenge, and I've been told that most people struggle with it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think I'm just thinking about that. It's something I've definitely struggled with a lot, especially when I was working in my corporate career. There's something about asking for help what does that mean about you if you have to ask for help? Like, you should be able to figure it out on your own. And as an executive coach now, I think this is also something that comes up for a lot of people. So I would assert that something that is in your comfort zone is, let's put it this way, I know for a fact that's outside of a lot of people's comfort zones, myself included sometimes. There's just something culturally, I don't know if this is an American thing or just more generally, that you should kind of know how to figure it out yourself. And if you ask for help, it means something about you. Like, either you haven't paid enough attention, or you haven't done the work yourself, or you're in some, I know for like, I work with a lot of high achievers, are expected to be good at everything. And as humans, we're just not good at everything. We're just not going to be good at everything. And yeah, that's interesting. So Ben, if we take that question and we flip it around, what's something that is outside of your comfort zone that's going to be inside of somebody else's?
Sometimes I have a hard time being with large groups unless I know a lot of people, or at least a few people in those groups really well. And when I was a rising freshman in high school, I went to a sleepaway camp. It the first few days were torture because I knew nobody, and I can handle being in an environment where I've never met anyone previously if it's for a few hours, but if it's for a few days, heck no. But one thing that helps with when I'm in these large groups, and it's not just groups with people I don't know, sometimes if it's a group where I'm the newest person and everyone else has all this history and I have close to none with 0 or only 1%, and and you get what I'm saying, right? Where I have...
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah.
It can be pretty hard, but one thing that helps is making an individual friend or feeling like someone's looking out for me. Days after I went to the camp, I did go on a hike with a friend, and we had not a friend yet, but we had this long conversation, me and Charlie, and we became friends, and we got really close after that. We stayed close for the rest of this camp.
That's great, Ben. Yeah, I was going to ask you, in terms of, we haven't really just said, but we mentioned you do have autism. Do you have problems with any sort of sensory things like being in like too much noise or anything like that, that it's just hard for you to like focus on people?
I don't have it as much as I used to, but when I was little, I struggled a lot with looking in people's eyes, and sometimes a conversation feels too intense, or something I'm doing feels too intense, and I do things such as scream or bang my leg. And I don't have that many struggles adjusting to sensory, I don't mind loud noises, especially since I spent years thinking autism was something I only had in my past, not something I still have and will have forever. Sometimes I struggle with imposter syndrome because of the fact that I don't mind loud noises and I don't have too many sensory struggles. But that's the thing about which I think is very important for people to understand about autistic people. We are not all the same any more than all neurotypicals are the same. Our problems differ.
Yeah, and I definitely want to dig in on this more, maybe after the break, because I think there's a lot to learn here, and there's a lot of preconceived notions that I'm pretty sure are just not true from some of the research I've done, and would love to get your perspective on this. So, well, maybe this leads to the next question. I don't know. We'll find out. So, Ben, if I was to be able to give you 5 minutes and you were able to deliver a message to everybody who wanted to listen, so let's say the entire world, and we got to listen to you for 5 minutes, what is it that you would speak to us about? What would your message be, and what would be your call to action at the end of your speech? Like, what would you want us to do with what we heard from you?
I would probably talk about how important autism acceptance is, and my call to action would be telling my community to not give up, and that we just have to be ourselves when we are with other peers and support each other and fight for our acceptance in order to get our acceptance.
So, Ben, I'm not autistic. I have 2 children. Our 5-year-old is not autistic. We have a almost 1-year-old. I don't know that we could say whether he is or not yet. But if you could educate us a little bit, you said support each other. Is there a level of not supporting each other in the autistic community?
That's a really good question. And to be honest, I've only been doing this since April, so I don't have all the answers yet. Not that I know of. There's no support or a lack of support, but it is important we stay connected and we have each other's backs.
Yeah. Last question before we go to a brief commercial break I have for you around this specifically is, and this kind of leads to the question after the break, but for everyone who's here listening, what would you want people who are, as you would call, I guess, neurotypical, what's the thing you want us to know? What's the thing how can we support you? How can we support the community more?
Just see us, see our differences, but don't see them as negative. See us as people first, but also see our autism as part of who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's probably extends outside of autism into all sorts of different areas of humanity. Just meet people where they are, relate to them as whole and complete in the way that they're made and the way they were born. And I think that would be a game changer for the world. I believe would be a game changer for the world and people's experience. So Ben, we're going to take a really brief commercial break. We'll be right back after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Ben, we're back. You ready to go for a little while longer?
Yeah.
I got some other questions for you. Awesome. So Ben, what is it that you would like us to know about you?
Sometimes, I talked about this earlier before the commercial, but sometimes when I feel overstimulated, I struggle with sometimes when I'm working on something challenging, I can get incredibly overstimulated and end up doing things I'm self-conscious about to make it easier, like, as I said, screaming or banging my leg or clenching my jaw or kicking the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I can be really self-conscious about this, and because I spent 3.5 years hiding my autism, it was really hard having these tendencies then. I think I do it as a way to, as there is this autistic talk show host named Carly Fleischman who has talked about how sometimes we do the things we do, including the behaviors I mentioned earlier, as well as rocking and others, just to create output to block out input. And sometimes I have a history at school of whenever there's a class that's been really upsetting for me, or whenever I'm overwhelmed, just running outside and letting out a scream, which I'm working on. These behaviors are stuff a lot of us have to work on, and which we know we need to try and change at least somewhat for polite society. But because we can't be perfect every time, and sometimes we do need to let them out, what we want most is to be understood. I think we can try to help these behaviors, but we can't do it every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's something that you know?
Can I talk more about this?
Yes, please. Mm-hmm. Yes, please do.
I don't want to do these too often, but I do feel, but since I let the world know about my autism last April, it's been really relieving to feel like when I do these things, people understand why now, and to feel like there isn't anything wrong with me because of them. I just have a different brain. During the years where I hid my autism, I usually tried masking these feelings, just faking it till you make it, but it's felt incredible to no longer have to do that, to still work on myself, but at the same time, accept myself for what I am.
Yeah. I've got a couple of questions for you related to this. Can I ask you them?
Sure.
Number one, and this is I think this will be educational for everyone here. Number one, what's something or a group of things that you know that will likely overstimulate you?
A question where I don't have the answer, especially with something that's important to me. An argument or a disagreement.
You don't like conflict?
No. And
got it.
When I'm doing a game or working on an assignment and don't get the result I want.
That results in, it sounds to me, if I was going to bottom line that, it sounds like frustration equals or equates to overstimulation for you?
Really, really often. Not every time, but...
Sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. Question number 2 is around the hiding. What did you do? Like, how did you hide or attempt to hide your autism?
Here's the story. What happened was, when I was in elementary school, I did this program to help, where the goal was to inspire me to connect with others, and the program was a success and gave me more social skills, but my family and I misinterpreted it and thought that the goal of the program was to remove my autism. Worse, we thought it did remove my autism, which confused me. And it actually led to me having some self-esteem issues, because I thought that even formerly having autism made me less human. In 8th grade, I got into an argument shortly after school started about whether or not you can recover from autism. And I'd just switched schools at that point. And this was my first real exposure to the fact that most people didn't believe you could recover. And I decided to keep it a secret because I didn't want to be seen as a crazy liar. But it felt liberating to be able to keep it a secret and to have nobody know, since at my old school I told pretty much everyone. However, 3 years later, I realized that having this secret was holding me back, and I knew I needed to let it out. And then, 5 months after that, I talked with a close relative who it turned out saw me as still autistic, which led me to wondering what autism really is and what it really means to be on the spectrum. When the weekend was over, I finally accepted that even though the program I did gave me more social skills, It did not change my autism. I'll always be autistic, but I don't want to be ashamed of it any longer. Autism, I am not inferior to non-autistic people. I finally understand that. And autism is something I should embrace. 2 months after that, for Autism Awareness Month, I posted my story on Instagram saying that I am autistic and proud to be so. And I was blown away by just how much support I got. Sometimes I still read my comments just as a way to remember the kindness.
Man, thanks for sharing all that, Ben. Thanks for being authentic about it and sharing your experience. That must have been so liberating when you finally came to grips with like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just who you are. You must feel amazing about that.
You have no idea.
I do not have any idea. I can only imagine.
Mm-hmm.
It must be amazing.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to diminish you, but this is something I get really emotional about.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. I don't have any idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any idea what that would be like, but I want to congratulate you and acknowledge you for doing the work with yourself to go there, because that will make all the difference.
The fact that it felt redeeming to keep it a secret is harmful, and I know I'm not alone with feeling ashamed of being autistic, and that is one of my biggest goals, to be an example of how we are as capable as anyone of leading a full and complete life, and how we shouldn't have to struggle self-esteem issues for having a different type of brain.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said a full and complete life, because you're in high school and you're also a published author. I don't know anybody else who's a full-time high school student who's also a published author. So I would love to talk a little bit or maybe a little bit more than a little bit about your book.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd love to hear more about your book specifically.
Absolutely. So what do you want to know about In the Hole?
Yeah, so In the Hole, let me read this for the audience. Let me read what the book is about. It gives hope and inspiration to young adults and their families who face homelessness and economic insecurities during this challenging time in history as we collectively face a global pandemic. So your greatest wish around this is to bring joy throughout your writing to kids all over the world. So you have written a book about, is it specifically due to the global pandemic and the effect that's had on people?
No. In fact, I wrote the final chapter of In the Hole months before the pandemic hit.
You did? Okay.
In the Hole is about a boy named David who struggles with being homeless during the late 2000s and early 2010s. He is in elementary and middle school as we watch his story. I wrote In the Hole to raise homelessness awareness and to help fight against homelessness. Dave telling how a middle-class boy becomes homeless almost overnight, and how he and his family struggle with things such as addiction, bullying, and serious illness throughout the course of the book.
What's the inspiration for the book?
At Temple in 8th grade, when I was in religious school, my rabbi showed my class and I a video about children who are facing homelessness in Florida. Seeing that made me want to help, and I thought, why not use my gift? Why not use my writing?
where can people pick up the book? Where can we find it? How can we get it? How can we read it?
You can get it from Amazon.com, or you can get it from jumpmasterpress.org. I think
Fantastic.
it's .org. I don't know for sure whether or not it's .com. Jumpmaster Press, just to clarify, is the publishing company which published In the Hole.
Cool. And we'll make sure that all of those URLs are in the show notes so people don't have to remember that. I want to ask you, Ben, what was your experience writing a book? Like, how was it for you? How long did it take? Did you find it challenging? Did you enjoy it? And also the last part of the question, I know there's multiple questions there. What's it like to know that you're a published author on Amazon? Like, I can actually go to Amazon and find your book. What's that experience like for you?
When you ask what was it like writing it, did you mean In the Hole or in general?
What was it like for you to write In the Hole specifically? Like your process? Did it flow pretty easily for you? Did you have a lot of challenges creating the content? What was the process like for you in terms of the experience of it?
Even though after I started preparing In the Hole for publication, I had to kill my darlings and remove one of the things it was about, which I'm about to mention, as well as finally start doing more proper research about homelessness. In the Hole served two purposes. I was struggling with vocabulary when I first wrote In the Hole, so I used it as a way to study for English vocabulary tests. I would play a vocab game where you are out if you get a word wrong twice, and I challenged myself to include whatever word got me out in the Hole. There was insane vocab in almost every sentence when I wrote my final draft of In the Hole, and I've had to take a lot of it out. A good amount of words remain, but they aren't clunky the way they were when I first wrote In the Hole. And I think having a purpose kept me from feeling less upset while writing it.
That's cool. Congratulations, Ben. I speak to a lot of authors here, and I always find writing a book to be quite a thing to take on, partially because I hate writing. So for me, to sit down and write a book does not sound like I love to read, and I like to write short things, but to sit down and write a book is not something that sounds appealing to me at all. So I really admire anybody who does it, whether they think it's fun or not, because it's just not something I'm interested in for myself.
And what are your other questions again, Jason?
I was just curious if you found the process, if you enjoyed it, because some people write books and I don't think they really enjoy it, and other people just love writing their own content. So how was it for you?
It was enjoyable.
The whole process?
Yeah, well, the editing part was really hard. I had I had to fact check a lot of things, and as well as finally actually talk to people who'd faced homelessness or groups which worked for them. But it was worth it. And
cool.
Give me a moment. And like I said, it was a little hard taking out the vocab, but it would but In the Hole's definitely better this way. There were way too many strange words, such as odoriferous and pal. And
odoriferous. What does that mean?
Something related to scent, but I don't remember specifically.
That's funny. So you had to maybe cut down the extraneous language or the extraneous language a little bit.
Yeah.
That's funny, Ben. That's awesome. Well, again, I just want to congratulate you one more time on having a published book out there, and my guess is this. Well, let me ask you. I'm not going to guess. Is this the first of many? Will we see more books from you out there in the future?
Yes. I have self-published several books before writing In the Hole, but hopefully In the Hole will be the first of many books published by Jumpmaster Press to come. In
Awesome.
fact, we are hoping to get my first few Nellie's Friends books published by them this winter.
Cool. You're working on that right now?
Yes.
I hope everybody's listening. Go buy the book. I'm sure that helps.
Please.
Yes, the more books you sell, the easier that conversation becomes.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, Ben. Is there anything else you want us to know about you, know about the book, know about anything else, any other message you want to share with us specifically around autism?
I think one thing, this is specifically to others on the spectrum. Look at what you can do, and that your gifts and the community that comes from being on the spectrum are, by gifts I mean skills. My brother says we all have superpowers, and mine is my writing, are what makes being autistic not as painful as one would imagine.
Nice. Thanks, Ben. All right. Ben, I want to know, what is it that you're passionate about? What gets you excited? What gets you pumped up?
I am passionate about more things than you can count. I love to read. I especially love reading sports stories. I love history. I love the Beatles. I obsess over my friends. Of course, I love writing.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of
so
things.
you mentioned something in there that whenever this comes up on the show, I always go in because it's also a huge passion of mine is music. What are your favorite Beatles songs? And I know it's a hard question because there's a lot of good ones, but like if you had to narrow it down, what are some of the top of your head? Like, what are your favorite Beatles songs?
Norwegian Wood, Yellow Submarine, even though I personally think that if Yellow Submarine is the only Beatles song you listen to, you're not a real fan.
No, I agree.
She Loves You, You've Gotta Hide Your Love Away, Blackbird. Yeah. There are a lot of really good ones.
Yeah, it's very hard. That's why I never what's your favorite Beatles song?
One more.
Yeah.
I love Help. And In My Life.
Yeah. Yeah. Asking somebody what their favorite Beatles song is not really a fair question because if you love the Beatles, most people I know cannot pick one Beatles song because they have so many amazing tunes. It's not like some bands where you're like, oh yeah, there's a one song that I really like that they did or a couple of them. Have you always been a Beatles fan as long as you've liked music? How did you learn about the Beatles?
Since I was a freshman, I've known about them for years, but I was never particularly interested in them until in the middle of 9th grade. A friend invited me to a Beatles dinner at a restaurant.
A Beatles dinner.
Some Beatles dinner at a restaurant where this band was playing a lot of their songs and where you could also give covers. I gave a great cover of Imagine.
Cool. That's awesome.
That was where when I really began to love the Beatles.
Yeah. Well, you definitely have good taste in music as far as I'm concerned.
Are you into the Beatles too?
Yeah, I love the Beatles. I've listened to the Beatles since my dad loves the Beatles. Since his generation, it was like my dad is 67 now, almost 68. So that would have been, like right in the wheelhouse of his teenage years. Probably about your age. I guess he was born in 54. So Beatles were like 64 to 74, something like that. So he would have been, right in the high school years. So yeah, I love the Beatles too. Have you ever seen Paul McCartney live, or have you ever did you like just Paul McCartney or just John Lennon, or are you more of a Beatles guy?
I'm Beatles. I do not listen to any of the independents except for Imagine. I did write a biography of John Lennon last spring where I did start to listen to more of his other solos, such as Beautiful Boy, but I still prefer the music they made together as a band.
Yeah. Awesome, Ben. What's the thing in your life that you're most proud of?
I'd say that's a tie between my writing and that I conquered my insecurity about autism. More likely than not, if I had to pick between the two, conquering my insecurity. It took a lot of work, as I mentioned earlier, and it was a really rough process. So, the fact that I did it makes me feel like I'm capable of more than I think.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, Ben. Did who supported you in that process? I'm assuming you didn't do it alone.
My family plus a really close friend.
And any specifics around how you went through the process? Do you have any moments of kind of like where you had an aha? Like, what was the breakthrough that made the getting over it possible?
I think because I'm really close with a family member who told me I'm still autistic and that I should embrace it. I'm really close with a family member. Earlier, when someone had said you can't recover or that I still had autism, including before the fight, I just cut some distance from them. Whereas this was a friend, this was a relative whom I'd always been close with and who I'd thought believed my story. And as long as we were on differing sides, I didn't know if I could stay close to him. So this was partially about making peace about the survival of our relationship. My dad was a huge help with this because he explained to me a little about how he asked me how I felt about ADHD and I thought that was lifelong but not autism, and he helped me understand that they're the same thing in that way. And one thing that really made it really good was because my mom was huge on the belief you could recover. She wrote a book about my story and everything. It was really helpful to hear that even when she thought I'd recovered, she still thought I had an autistic brain. I think hearing all of that gave me my aha, my knowing that if I didn't know if I could stay close to my relative. What my dad said about ADHD and what my mom said about having an autistic brain.
Very cool,
and
Ben.
One more thing, and I'm begging you, please cut this part after I say it, but I want you to talk to my parents, or I'll talk to my parents about whether or not this part about the aha moment isn't too personal.
Yeah, I'll just cut it. It's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just cut it.
Thank you. That would actually be really good. Rather than me talking to them, just cut
problem.
it, please.
Yeah, that sounds good. 42 minutes. Yeah, no problem. I'll just cut it, Ben. I'll probably edit this tonight. So 42 minutes. I'll just remember this question. All right, Ben, do you have time for a couple more questions with us?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So Ben, what's What's something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
I have a bit of a history of being a selfish and violent idiot, which I've worked hard to overcome. But sometimes I'm terrified that the fact I've changed doesn't matter and that I'm still a bad person.
That must be hard to live with sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But well, it's funny because you have a lot of, from the outsider view, there's a lot of proof that you're certainly not a bad person and you've done a lot of good in the world. Even like we don't know each other. We just showed up to do this episode together about 47 minutes ago. And I've heard nothing but amazing things you're doing for your family, for friends. You wrote a book about a very important topic. And so it's interesting that you go back to there. But I think that's how our brain likes to keep us small and keep us down, right? Is like, yeah. Which is why I asked the question, because it's a revealing question about how people think.
I am sending you a virtual air hug right now.
Oh, thank you too, Ben. All right, for everybody, we're doing a virtual air hug from, I think you're probably about 60 miles from me, so not too far away. Thank you, Ben. That was nice. So as we start to wrap up here, I wanted to kind of hone in on how it is that you see the world specifically. So you can think of this as, what's Ben's philosophy on life? How do you see the world when you get up in the morning? Like, what do you have for us?
I think in terms of life, sometimes it's hard and we all make mistakes, but there is nothing more important we can do than try.
So it sounds like the way you see the world is a place to continue to show up and practice.
Yes.
And try again. Do you have any advice or words of wisdom for anybody here who may be feeling like they don't want to try the thing anymore? They're ready to give up on something. Maybe a book, for example. Somebody might be listening and wants to write a book.
Someone who needs book inspiration. Here's what I tell anyone who needs inspiration for writing a book. Read a lot of books, watch a lot of movies, and live a lot of life.
That's awesome. I was not expecting the last one, live a lot of life. That's so good. That's awesome, Ben. Where can we all connect with you? And just to say this, everything you're about to share with us is going to go into the show notes, so people don't have to write these down. But yeah, where can people connect with you?
You can visit my website, benlevinauthor.com, or you go to my Instagram, benlevinauthor.
Awesome. That'll all be in the show notes. We'll link to and people will do that. So, Ben, I want to thank you so much for being on with us. It's been really a pleasure to get to know you, to hear what you're up to hear about the book. I want to congratulate you one more time on getting a book out.
Thank you
I'm not really sure how you get to be a full-time high school student and all the things that comes with, and also have time to write a book. But I'm wildly impressed, because I know I have people on the show, all they do is write books, and they're adults. So like, they don't have school to go to, so they can get up, they have their time to write their book. So congratulations on doing that. Tradition on the show, Ben, is words of wisdom. And these words of wisdom should be small, fit on a Post-it note or an Instagram post. So what do you got for all of us here listening today?
Working hard makes our dreams come true.
Right. Working hard makes our dreams come true. Ben Levin. Thank you so much, Ben. Keep up the good work. And I can't wait to have you back on to talk about what you're up to next.
Thanks, Jason.
Take care, Ben.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.